What's up, my loves? My name is Paige, this is Pages with Paige, and this is my top 20 of 2020. As per usual, I am just going to be a ball of emotion and zero articulation or synopsises, because that's how we roll in this house. I am just so excited to be talking about my favorite books of last year. I have quite a few that have surprised me. I did not expect them to go into my top 20, but here we are. There are a few that they're teetering right on the edge. There is no particular order until our top 5. Let's dive in. The first book that I feel is in my top 2020 list is The Bookish Life of Nina Hill by Abby Waxman. A common thing about when I adore books, I tab them. It might not be to the nth degree, but I just feel that I'm having such an enjoyable reading experience that I have to note the quotes. I need to remember these things because they're absolutely brilliant. I just opened to one. Grilled cheese in any form was her spirit animal. Excuse me, are you talking about me? So the issue is he's not bookish, or that you're not sporty. Maybe there's something you're both interested in. Movies, animals, entomology. Like, I think there's just so many beautiful, funny quotes. My favorite was, dudes, your penis is not the most photogenic thing about you. Let's be honest, the out of context penis is not an attractive item. It's a naked mole rat wearing a beanie. I think that line cemented this as being in one of my top 20s. The next I absolutely fell in love with was A Girl Like Her by Talia Hibbert. It was perfect balance of smart and plot. The characters were well defined and just so wholesome and lovely. I think a running trend for most of 2020 for me is having those hard-hitting topics, but with those characters that are just so beautiful. You can't help but fall in love with them. The next is Talking to My Country by Stan Grant. I don't have a copy with me at the moment because I lent it to my mum. I tabbed the fuck out of this book. Like, Stan Grant's writing is phenomenal. He just encapsulates his way of thinking so clearly and then uses other references as a springboard for his points of discussion. Like, it's not arguments, he's just stating his existence. He's using others to be like, this is my experience, this is their experience, let's experience this better. And just, it was a really eye-opening experience. I'm so thrilled that April convinced me to read it because, yeah, definitely a favorite book about Australia, our Indigenous people, and where we need to be going and listening. The next book on my list is Ivy Aberdeen's Letter to the World by Ashley Herring-Blake. Ashley Herring-Blake has cemented herself as a favorite author. This is following Ivy when a tornado comes and destroys her house. She is staying at like a makeshift canteen, like in a school hall or something, and she has her journal, which has pictures of her and other people that are of the same gender, and she is still trying to figure out everything. There's really great family dynamics in this and building trust towards family members when you feel that they have done wrong by you. And yeah, it's just, it is so lovely. I feel that it's so important for it to be hyped up. I'm so thankful to Molly from Mind of Molly for making this Detectathons group book. So I ended up picking it up that way and just spreading this. This needs to be in every single school library for children to pick up because I think it's so valuable, and the way that it's communicated is brilliantly done. Next is Record of a Space Bomb for You by Becky Chambers. So this just, the whole series fills me with joy. I cried. I love the relationships in here. I feel like there are just so many beautiful elements, like Belle and Kip, and just, oh. So I just adore Becky Chambers' way of looking at the world and just the characters she creates. Just, mwah. I can't wait for the 4th book. I'm very hyped for it. Next up, we have a bit of a darker one, and that is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. I am fully aware that the second this book got released into the world, it was going to be in my top 20 and become a new all-time favorite. This is following Vanessa as she deals with the aftermath of her relationship with her English teacher when she was 15. And a lot of people have come forth and said that this person has sexually assaulted them, and she's horrified. So it's reflecting on both the present and the past, her dealing with the different situation and how she was groomed, and for her to now think on her sexual awakening as a rape. And it's really, really hard to read. You're reading what he's saying to her and going, no, But the thing is, when you're in that situation, you don't see it like that. You see it as a love story, because if it's not a love story, what is it? And yeah, it really hit home in a lot of different ways. It put me into a brain spiral for about 3 weeks. Every time I think on it, I'm like, oh yes, yes, feelings, thank you. But yeah, absolutely, 100%. Such a brilliant read. Going back to Cute and Fluffy, Tea Dragon Society by Katie O'Neill. Fuck, I love this so much. I'm so thankful that April sent this to me. Just the art style and the story is just beautiful. Just everything about this makes me feel joy. And that's what I really need in some books. Some I need to be really hard-hitting contemporaries, or fantasies or whatever. But sometimes you just need a good, fluffy, soul-cleansing read. And this does that. It is beautiful. It is just, everything about it is just pure amazement and joy and wonder. And I can't wait to get my hands on the next two, and I keep forgetting because they're expensive and it makes me sad, but I'm very excited just to love this for all eternity and scream into the ether about it. We have an interesting one because I don't think I raved about it as much as some of these others, but it's A Man Is So Discreet by Minnie Mcguinness. I fucking love this. So this is following Grace as she's put into a mental asylum because she is pregnant and young. And it's interesting following her discovering her voice, discovering her mental strength. When she is in the asylum, which is a very unethical practice, there is a mentor that arrives, as well as essentially like the first Sherlock sort of character. And it was just brilliant. I think Grace learning her own strength was amazing. Her like development with Thorn Hollow, just, yes. Really, really, really love this. Minnie Mcguinness, favorite author. Established this after Female of the Species, and this has similar sort of vibes, so I really enjoyed it for that. Next up we have This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal, Malta and Max Gladstone. This is following Red and Blue. It's a sci-fi novella that follows treachery and love, opposing sides, science versus nature. How this is so lyrical and beautiful, just it's so, so wonderful. It's one of those that I really can't describe. Your best bet is just to read it. It's really quite short, so it's not too bad. And oh, it's just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Next up we had one that took me by surprise, and that's The Butterfly Garden by Dot Hutchinson. Mostly because this isn't my sort of genre. As I'm learning, I actually can get more into it, but this just took me by surprise. It was so well written, it was so eloquently done. It explored quite hard-hitting topics, but done in such a sophisticated manner, and it blew my mind. Like, the villains in this were brilliantly done. The protagonist in this was so strong, and just hearing her story, even though it's fictional, was just so hard-hitting, and I adored it. Next up is a bit of surprise because I did not think this would make my favorites. I hoped that I would enjoy it. I did not think it would make my favorites list though. And that is Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. This is the first Samantha Shannon that I've ever read, and I love her writing. As you can see, I tabbed up my sections to read, and most of the time I would accidentally go through a few more just because the story was so captivating. I loved having elements of LGBT rap. I loved seeing the West versus the East. I loved the elements of dragons, both shown in a negative but also in a positive light. And yeah, just wow. It's a chunk. I am impressed with myself for getting through it. I feel that there's just so many different elements of this that it is so hard to even begin to describe. I quite like the tagline on the back. A world divided, a queendom without an heir, an ancient enemy awakens. The next generation of hit fantasy fiction, a feminist Lord of the Rings. I feel like it's done better than Lord of the Rings, but let's not open up that debate. I think Samantha Shannon has really, really clever ideas and her execution of them is wonderful. Next up, again, hard-hitting issues, adorable characters. Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb. This fits my soul. I was crying. I was very crying at the end. There was just a whole lot, and I'm so excited to continue on with Fitz's story. I'm not sure if it's like set before this time, but it's just yes. It ends, like it starts at a particular point which is intense and ends in a completely different element, and it's just like, what? How are you so amazing? I don't understand. I do not understand. But I think that it's such an interesting fantasy series, and I can't wait to continue reading Robin Hobb's writing. I've fallen in love with it. Next up is definitely a surprise, and that is I Let You Go by Claire Mcintosh. I don't know if my friend will be screaming knowing that it made my top 20 books of 2020, but I just felt that this was so different. It was so interesting. It kept me captivated for so long. This has a lot of trigger warnings. It's like not realistic, but it's also fiction. It's not meant to be realistic. I think every other thing just is done so well, and the plot twist after plot twist and just hard hitting after hard hitting, it just, oh, yes, I love this. I really enjoyed it, so I picked up Let Me Lie. Yeah, this really took me by surprise. I don't want to say anything about it. It is a psychological thriller, so just go in, enjoy the ride, look up your trigger warnings if you have any, because they're probably in here. I feel weird putting this on my favorites list, but I can't not. Akamath by Sarah J Maas was just so fucking good. I think this was the perfect combination of me falling in love with villains, which we see as a trend, the darkness versus the light, the hard-hitting versus them being personified one way to the other, people taking back their choice. It's some good shit. Also, Gavin from How to Train Your Gavin's vlog of reading this was just fucking hilarious. There is one scene that I think he takes a bath. That might have been an Akatar, but definitely check those out because he's fucking hilarious. Next up was one that I saw at the movies on January 1st and knew that I needed to read the story behind it, and that is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I hadn't read Little Women before. I had no interest in it. I just went and saw the movie. We wanted something to do on New Year's Day. It was very hot, so we ended up going to the movies, and this is what we saw. And I was captivated. I was charmed. I was delighted. I was depressed. There is a lot of feelings that go into this, and so I immediately went the next day to the bookstore, picked up the last copy that they had, and proceeded to read it, and fell in love with the story itself. I feel like I'm a very strong mix of two of the characters in this. Let me know if you can guess who, but I just love seeing the family dynamic. Their mum's quotes were just so beautiful, and the way that it was written was really captivating. For someone that's not a historical person, I felt like it was really well done, and I fell in love with it. It's one of my favorite classics. I'm also not a classicist, so having one that I really enjoy gives me hope for the future. Sorry about the angle change. My book stash just went into the tripod. So, top 5. Number 5 in my top 2020 is Learn My Lesson by Katie Roberts. Fuck, this was brilliant. Everything about it. Hades, Hercules, and Meg just as a Polly, yes. Katie Roberts knows how to write smart, knows how to write amazing fucking characters, knows how to blast open my childhood into new territories. She has the perfect combination of plot, story, character development, just everything mixed together to make a really, really amazing erotica story. Like, it was phenomenal. And I just, yes. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. I am loving the series as a whole. Learn My Lesson was probably just one of my favorites because I love the power dynamic between Hades and Hercules, and then throwing Megan, Hades, and then adding in Hercules. Just the whole conglomerate of them was just, yes, absolutely loved it. Next up was Cry as Well by Nina Varela. This took me by surprise. I really didn't know how I was going to feel about it, and then I fell in love with it. I think having a lot of these books have LGBT rap, and it just hits home in a different way for me, and I really, really enjoy that. I think it was just beautifully done. The way that it was executed was wonderful, and the story itself progressed so wonderfully and just intense, and I want the next one in my hands right now, but we're still waiting for it to come in from the bookstore. But so hopefully I Am Heart will be on my top 21 of 2021. Next up is a series that I have been ranting and raving about, and if you don't know that this made it into my top 20, you must be new. And welcome. Hello. Sorry, I'm a chaotic mess. And that is the Hell's Library series by AJ Hackworth. So I am including in my top 5 both The Library is Now Unwritten and The Archive of Forgotten. It's my list, I can do what I want with it. These books just, fuck. They are so, so wonderful. I know that I've talked about them pretty recently. I talk about them pretty recently in every fucking video. So yeah, again, the combination of having wonderful fleshed out characters, an engaging plot, following myth and afterlife, hell and heaven, just all those elements just hit my soul in a wonderful way. It's bookish, but it's also not bookish, so if you're not bookish, you'll still enjoy it, and just every element of it just keeps me absolutely captivated and enthralled. And yeah, Ash and I were both so excited. We really have a shared love of this now, and it's really nice having that as part of our relationship. Like, it's a massive cornerstone to it, and I'm so thankful. So having those positive associations with these as well just adds to the beauty of them. Number 2 is Know My Name by Chanel Miller. Are we surprised? No. I felt that Chanel just has the most beautiful way of writing her experience, and as harrowing as it is, she has made this her own. She has given herself her voice back. She has given other victims of sexual assault their voices back. She has opened the gateway to able to use this as a stepping stone. I don't think this book is going to be able to be read by everyone, and that's totally understandable. But if you can deal with it, if you can look at the American justice system, and a lot of it is impacted globally, feel free to give it a try. But prepare to cry a lot, prepare to feel frustration, and prepared to feel amazement at Chanel and the way that she manages to reclaim her story, to make it her own, and to illuminate how the justice system is so fucked. It's ridiculous. Again, I have such amazing quotes just everywhere. We scrutinize the victim's actions instead of examining the behavioral patterns of sexual predators. Now I was learning whose voices were amplified inside the courtroom, those were muted. Yeah, I cannot form enough words to just push this. I don't want to push this onto everyone because I know that it could be very triggering and very upsetting, and I don't want people to go through that if they don't have to. But if you feel up for it, I would highly recommend it. And number 1, my top book of 2020. I don't have my copy. I've lent it out to a friend, and that is A Hut in the Body of the World by Deb Coletti. I can't begin to explain how monumental this book was to me when I read it. I feel that I've gushed about it on every possible video, so there is no surprises in this. It sits with me every fucking day, and the quotes in it just resonate with me in such a way. It's not necessarily the plot that was my end goal. It's about a girl that decides to run from one end of America to the other after going through a really traumatic experience. But it is such a brilliant examination on what we let people get away with in terms of sexual harassment, sexual assault, how we are pushed and encouraged to make everyone else happy rather than looking after ourselves. When we feel uncomfortable in a situation, oh, it's better to be nice. It's better to not be honest with ourselves, but rather to not upset them in case they do something. Because at the end of the day, with Americans' gun laws, they're still probably going to do something. It is one of the best books I've ever read. It is my all-time favorite. I need to reread it. I also need to get my copy off my friend so I can see where I've tabbed it. I've written down a lot of the quotes, but I feel like I'm still missing some. And yeah, so I could point out at least 3 other books on this list whose the story itself I enjoyed more, where the plot points stick a lot harder to me, but this book hit me and resonated on a whole new level because I was that girl. I still am that girl. I would rather be nice than disappoint people. I'd rather put myself in situations that I don't feel comfortable with because I don't want to disappoint people. And having that spoken, that being written in a book for teens, young adults and myself to read, that's why it's my favorite book of 2020. And yeah, I adore it. I think it was definitely a cultural awakening for myself, which was delightful. Those are my top 20. Let me see if I can stack them up again. So, shit, tucky mushrooms. So these are just some of the top 20 books that I read in 2020, minus 6, I think. I adore these. I was saying to Ash when I compiled this little pile together, staring at this just gives me joy. It makes me so happy. As you can see, I have a few holes in my favorite shelf, so I'll need to restock those. And yeah, I'm just so thrilled to be able to be reading such amazing books and getting to develop my reading taste, finding out what I love, finding out what I don't really enjoy, so then I can just read more favorites. And yeah, I think it was quite hard for me to narrow down this list, but I'm really, really happy with the ones that I picked. Let me know in the comments, what are some of your favorites of 2020? I'd love to know. I'm so excited to hear all the books that you read that just fill you with joy and or dread in some of these cases, but it's a good kind of dread. And if you like this video, feel free to give it a big thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more of this mess, feel free to subscribe, and I'll hopefully see you in my next video. Bye!